The fundamental shifts, the big challenges. We are aging. This is an aging population. Japan, you know, everybody looks at the Japanese stagnant economy. It's a manifestation of the fact that their population is not growing at all, and it's aging at the same time. So they have a declining workforce in relationship to a retirement, a larger and larger retirement cohort. Here, we do have an aging population, but because of immigration and a little more fertile in family structures, we seem to be still growing, and growth is good. The one thing you guys have, and I'll point this out, is that you have growth to work with. If you were in Detroit, you know, not only do you have a depressed economy and a shifting workforce set of demands, but you have no growth. Growth is the most healthy thing you could have to remedy future and current problems. And so growth is a big part. But what kind of growth? Well, here you can see in the US, we're no longer mom and pop and the kids. It's not an Ozzie and Harriet world anymore. One size doesn't fit all. The house on the cul-de-sac is not everybody's first choice, even though it seems to be, quote unquote, the American dream, and it's a mental habit everybody has that this is who we are, and if you try to change it, you're un-American in some way. The reality, of course, is we're only less than a quarter of the population are families with kids. Now, there's new people moving into that category, and then there are older people moving out of that category. It's all life cycle. But the fact that over 75% of the households need something perhaps other than large homes on large lots in great school districts is an important thing to finally come to terms with. And I think to some degree, our paradigm of who we are hasn't really grasped that. Now, the other big challenge, of course, is no matter how much asphalt you put out there, you will have congestion. The amazing thing is you don't. So this is a dilemma that you can avoid, but you're not going to avoid it by building more roads. I can give you countless examples in countless regions across the country and the world where more highways never solve the problem. If you create capacity, normally it induces trips and you end up in the same place. Costs. Once again, you're not confronting the crisis that many other communities are in affordable housing. But the idea of affordable housing has to be expanded. What happened in 2008 was the product not just of bad loans, but it was that people overreached in their personal economies when they really didn't understand the relationship between transportation costs and housing costs. People moved to more and more distant suburbs to get more affordable housing, because the farther away you were, the more affordable it was. And they didn't take into account the costs of transportation. But look at these numbers here. On average, it's about 50%. And look how close, 20% and 27% of household income goes to cars and housing. And then as you get into more low-income communities, those ratios go up and people become more and more disadvantaged. But people don't recognize that in many communities, transportation is as expensive as housing. And that's the burden of the auto culture. Now, what we've also seen is that this problem is accelerating, which actually does lead a little bit into that whole collapse in '08. We built a lot of large lot single family. It was not what the market needed or could afford when you looked at total household budgets, and therefore it had to be, one way or another, discounted in value. And we did it abruptly in '08, and it was much to the detriment of the global economy. But look at what was happening. Housing costs increased at over 50%, transportation costs going up, the combination going up dramatically more than household income. And when you have that kind of diverging numbers, you have a deep problem. So the corrective notion here is to get an economy in balance, you need to get what is the 800-pound gorilla in the household pocketbook under control: housing and transportation. How do you do that? you right size the housing. You get the right kind of housing for the right population, and you get it in a place where people don't have to own 3 cars. It's kind of a simple, fundamental solution. And the good news is the market is headed there anyway. So it's not like you're struggling uphill to change people's behavior. You just have to respond to their needs. So here in Ohio, this analysis starts with the first question, which is how much growth you're going to have. In many communities, that's a big debate. The good news here is you have robust growth, and you ought to put your arms around it. The big question is, what kind of growth does that represent? How do you fit the land use policies that you have and the transportation policies that you have to who you really are becoming? Not who you are, but who are you becoming? And what's the next generation need? And then, in order to understand that, what are the impacts?